Hello friends and welcome. My name's Popeye. Today we're playing some more Higurashi Chapter 5 Mayakashi. As per usual, I'm going to have a bit of a disclaimer warning at the start of this game. I can see your messages, Samus. Yes. Hi. It's not like you haven't been waiting for 5 hours for this stream. Or longer. That's just when I noticed. Yes, I agree that I can see your messages. Therefore I am. But yes, this game is not for everyone. This game has a lot of topics that not everyone finds finds as their kettle of tea. So this game deals with some of the following. It deals with murder, gore, torture, child abuse, any of those things: murder, death, gore, torture against children, and foul language. And any of that is not for you. Please find somewhere else to spend your day, evening, whatever it is for you. With that said, last time we started off with a summary and walkthrough of Shion's song, what that means for her. If you missed that, you can check out the first 20-ish minutes of last stream. If anyone wants my notes on that, I do have them saved just as a plain text file on my computer. So we walk through that, and then we continue with the game where after the Watanagashi festival, we decided to stay over at the main family house because we were drunk at 15. We woke up at 3 a.m. and our sister, Mion, wasn't in the same room as us anymore. And there was a light on down the hallway from our grandmother's room. We go and listen in and discover that Mio and Tomitake have both been killed, that they know that they were in the ritual storehouse, and that there were two other people. Then the phone rings. We're paralyzed by fear. Mion comes out, catches us eavesdropping. After she answers the phone call, she comes back and intimidates us, holding us up by the collar against the wall, asking us questions. And we get scared and had enough, and we just tase her. Then we go and tase our grandmother, drag them both to the family dungeon, throw Mion in prison, put our grandmother in a wheelchair with straps, find out that she's already dead, probably from being tased and having a heart attack or something, or just heart stopped. We decide to take a whip off the wall and beat the ever-loving crap out of her anyways. We interrogate Mion, trying to learn what she knows. Basically, what she knows is she's... everything has gone through the grandmother, who's now dead. She knows that there's existence of some of this kind of underbelly kind of stuff, which is likely responsible for the murders of Mio and Tomitake. But she really, at least she gives the impression that she really doesn't know anything that goes on, that she's kind of been shielded from that. Afterwards, we dump our grandmother's body down a well, and now we're pretending to be Mion and do damage control, because we figure Shion would have to be demoned away, as well as Keiichi. So we're going to go to school and live our lives as Mion while keeping an eye on Keiichi and just trying to not get caught, because we murdered our grandmother, locked up her sister, and have taken over her life. So yeah, that's what happened last time. This stream might be a hair longer. I think we only have 2 more streams of this game. And we've been sticking at about 2 chapters a game. There's 4 chapters left, but then there's also the after party, and the after party takes about, I would say, 20-25 minutes. So I might run 10-ish minutes into the second last chapter just to make up for some of that time that's going to be spent at the after party. So with that, let's load in. So from this point on, we are pretending to be Mion to Probably basically everyone except for maybe our guardian who knows basically that we went into the ritual storehouse but doesn't know the fact that we, killed our grandmother and are taking the place of Mion. Yay! But it'll still call us Shion in the text box.
待っててくれたわけ？先に行っちゃってもよかったのに。
あれ、ミオン、お前顔が赤くないか？息も妙に荒いし。
みーちゃん、ひょっとして具合悪くない？
Rena put her hand on my
レ
forehead.
ナの手冷たいな。みーちゃん、ちょっとだけど熱あるよ。そんな大したことないよ。半日もすればケロッと治っちゃうって。
本当に大丈夫かよ。あんまり無理するなよ。
あれ、ケイちゃん気遣ってくれるの？嬉しいな。
I'd always thought he was a goofball, so I was a little surprised. I thought they would tease me, but they didn't.
無理しない方がいいと思うな。先生にはお休みだって伝えとくよ。
Yes, reason for being off today, being drunk
大丈夫大
and
丈夫。
hungover.
風邪薬も飲んだし、すぐに効いてくると思うから。
じゃあ行こうか。くれぐれも無理するなよって言いながら時間。
走らないと間に合わない。スリリングな朝になっちゃったね。鈍った体にはちょうどいいカツかもね。走ろ。それでは院長、号令。あ、起立。気をつけ。
I've made the same mistake before. I never learn, do I?
みーちゃん、本当に大丈夫かな？今日は具合悪そう。あら、そうなんですの。それはよくありませんわね。
It was a good idea to make them believe I was sick. Even if I did things differently from Mion, I had an excuse.
まああれだ。女の子には体調が悪くなる日もあるってことだな。
Dang it, Keiichi.
僕にはそんな日はないのですよ。
Please don't make us explain periods to the little girls.
みぱー。
Mion's friends kept each other occupied and left me alone. Keiichi Maibara. You might suddenly disappear one day. I couldn't let that happen. That would be like letting a fish take the bait and swim away while I was fast asleep with a fishing pole in my hands. I couldn't miss the moment the enemy took a bite out of Keiichi. I had to be very careful. It was impossible to keep my eyes on him 24 hours a day. Spying on him at school like this wasn't good enough. Should I have met him? Blah! Let's try this again. Should I have him meet with Shion and let her explain that he's in danger? Maybe we could set up a strategy together. I didn't think Keiichi realized how serious a crime it was to step into the ritual storehouse. I hadn't, after all. Since last year, all the incidents that related to the curse had probably been investigated in secret. People involved with the three families would know about the incident from last night, but Keiichi shouldn't know anything. If he knew where he stood now, he'd be more cautious too. That should make him aware of his surroundings. Maybe he would notice if anything odd took place. The teacher caught him sleeping, so she ordered him to go wash his face. He walked out into the hallway. That doesn't sound like a big punishment. Like, oh, you were sleeping during class? Just go wash your face. Like, I know they're probably trying to wake him up, but give him some actual punishments. Go clap some erasers. I was sleepy too. I had to be alert, but I couldn't clear my mind due to my lack of sleep. I decided to go home early. Since I'd been pretending to be sick since morning, my request was approved. As I exited the building, I saw Keiichi washing his
やっぱ
face.
ケイちゃんはこっちの流しを選んだか。表の方が気分いいもんね。
あ、ミオンか。授業サボるなよな。
Looked like it felt refreshing for him to wash his face with cold water. I washed my face too. But it didn't feel as good as it looked.
ミオン、風邪の方はいいのかよ。眠いのは寝不足じゃなくて、風邪薬の副作用なんだろ。
あはは、実は内緒なんだけど、昨日はお祭りの後で親族の宴会に巻き込まれちゃってさ。それでエンドレスに。
Gulp. I pretended to drink with an invisible glass.
徹夜明けかよ。心配して損した。
Keiichi exaggerated his reaction, but he still seemed worried.
じゃあな、俺は教室に戻るぜ。帰りは気をつけろよ。フラフラして側溝や用水路に落ちるなよ。
Keiichi turned around to go back to the classroom.
そうそう、ケイちゃん。
I stopped Keiichi. He, in response, turned around.
なんだ。
変なことを聞くけど、深く考えないで答えてね。
そりゃ内容によりけりだな。
昨日の綿流しの晩さ、富武さんと高野さんに会わなかった？
I noticed Keiichi's body tense up. His reaction proved that he felt guilty about sneaking into the ritual storehouse. He was frightened that Mion Sonozaki might know about it. I guess this was enough to give him a certain impression of Mion
富
Sonozaki.
武さんと高野さんはわかるよね。ほら、ケイちゃん、お祭りの前日準備の時、シオンと一緒に4人でお話ししてたで
Irish
しょ
has redeemed Stretch. Hello, Irish. We will get that Stretch for you. Ugh. Push the chair over. That's a bit too high. We're not juggling. Juggling while I stretch would be a challenge. Do I want to know how many points you have, Samus's? $1.4k points. You do spend your points as you get them most days. I was in a stream earlier this afternoon, and there was a prediction if someone was going to beat this boss in the first try. And usually if there's predictions, I'll play devil's advocate, because it's no fun if everyone votes for the same thing and no one gets any points. So everyone's like, nah, you can't beat this boss in one shot. And there was like 6.5k points saying that they couldn't do it. And I was like, what the heck, I'll put like 100 down that they can do it. Well, they did beat the boss in one shot, and I got 6.5k channel points. So, yeah. I just came back like, wait, did I actually win this? I was just wanted to give people some points who I thought weren't going to get any when they won. Alright, there's your stretch. I could clearly see how dismayed Keiichi felt. He was trying to come up with an excuse.
さあ、どうかな。あったような、合わなかったような。
He was both a bad liar and a bad actor. He wasn't really that intelligent at all. Well, that would make him a suitable friend for Mion. Oh, jeez. He was just a brat, unlike Satoshi-kun. Although when it came to lying and acting, Satoshi-kun was about at the same level. Maybe Keiichi should be credited for at least trying to tell a lie. Satoshi-kun wouldn't have even said a thing. I didn't need to be thinking about him right now.
そう、 じゃあもう一つ質問ね。同じく昨べ、シオンに会わなかった？
This was a very mean question. Keiichi was perplexed, as I'd expected.
それ昨日も聞いたよな。俺会ったかどうかわからないって答えたと思ったぜ。
Eh? I'd asked him that yesterday? It must have meant that Mion Sonozaki asked him that question. In other words, she asked him that after he left the storehouse and got back together with his friends. Damn you, Mion. When I asked her, she said she had no idea we went into the ritual storehouse. Shit.
そうだっけ？また改めて聞いたら違う答えが返ってくるかなって思ってさ。
どうして会ったかどうかをそんなに気にするんだよ。
He was getting defensive. Keiichi couldn't hide his panic as he flared up
大
at
した
me.
ことじゃないの。富武さんと高野さんとシオンとケイちゃんをね、悪く言ってる人たちがいるの。何が悪いんだかはよく聞いてないんだけどね。
Keiichi was really perplexed now. This wasn't fun at all, but it could still be an interesting game.
私、ケイちゃんが悪いことをするなんて信じてないから。でも、ちょっとだけ聞いてみたかったから聞いてみたの。不愉快な思いをさせてごめんね。
Made sure Keiichi felt a sense of crisis, then left. Nobody can tell us apart. We're Mion and Shion, perfect twins. Notebook Diary, page 186. When I returned to the Sonozaki house, I saw a woman with an apron on. It was a housekeeper. Her name was Shimiko-san. The hag had a few housekeepers who took care of the chores around the house.
Mion-chan! 本当によかった。
Shouldn't you be asking why we're not in school?
ありゃ、シミコさん。何かご用で？
Today was her turn to come help out at the house. She'd arrived, but the gate was locked and she couldn't get in. She'd called. There was no answer, so she'd just been standing there, not knowing what to
抹
do.
茶ですね。綿流しの祭りで面白くないことがあったみたいで、昨べからすごく機嫌が悪いんです。
ああ、そうですか。
Shimiko-san tried to remember if she'd done something
別に
wrong.
無視してるんじゃなくて、寝込んでるだけなんです。昨べ、だいぶ遅くまでカリカリしてたから、多分まだ起きられないんじゃないでしょうか。知ってるでしょ？一度機嫌を損ねたバッチャが、どれだけの期間機嫌が悪いかを。
そうですね。困りましたね。
しばらく顔を見せない方がいいと思います。シミコさんに悪気がなくても、バッチャは何かと咎めてくるに違いありませんから。こういう時は私に任せといてください。
そうですか。それは助かりますけど。
シミコさん、申し訳ないんですけど、他のお手伝いさんにもしばらく来なくていいと伝えてもらっていいですか？バッチャの機嫌が治ったらこっそり電話しますから。しばらくそっとしてあげてください。
Shimiko-san bowed, then left on her bicycle. Anyone who had ever experienced Granny's wrath would understand. I headed into Mion's room, set her alarm clock for 2 p.m., and crawled into her bed. I needed to recover quickly. I had to be sharp, calm, and cool-headed. School should be out by 2 p.m. Maybe I'd get in touch with Keiichi. I'd have to call him. There would also be a staff meeting at the Furude Shrine Assembly Hall in the evening. All the leaders of the 3 families, their relatives, and the town council members would gather at this meeting. They were all authority figures in Hinamizawa. I'd be attending in place of the hag who was sick. I'd worry about the rest when I got there. People shouldn't notice that Mion and the hag were missing for a long time. I didn't need to worry as I had plenty of time. I checked the alarm once more and fell asleep as if someone switched me off.
もしもし。
園崎の妹の方です。こんにちは。今はお時間大丈夫ですか？
シオンか。ミオンと同じで今日は寝不足で寝込んでるんじゃないかと思ったぜ。
え？ひょっとしてお姉、早退ですか？お姉らしい。
Keiichi had no idea that the Mion he saw earlier was actually me. He didn't notice when we talked in person, so there's no way he would notice on the phone. This is way before caller ID existed. I never knew that playing two roles would be so much fun. To feel such enjoyment in this game of life or death, maybe I was getting used to this situation. Or maybe my senses had gone numb.
ごめんな。ちょっと親が電話待ちをしてるんで、そんなに長話はできないんだ。何の用だ？
お話ししたいことがあったんですけど、長電話が無理じゃ仕方ないですね。
じゃあさ、会って話をしないか。ついでに図書館にも案内してもらえるとありがたい。
図書館って駅前の私立図書館ですか？別にいいですよ。バイトのついでってことで。
We decided to meet in Okonomiya. It wasn't easy to get there from Hinamizawa, but I had to hurry. I couldn't run into Keiichi as he was heading there himself. I recalled that the key to the hag's motorcycle was in her secret drawer. The hag usually got driven around for public events, but when she had her own errand, she rode her motorcycle. Keiichi, I assumed, was going to ride his bicycle. I tried to get to Okonomiya before he did. Keiichi arrived quite a bit later than me. Motorcycles are faster, after all. There were hardly any traffic lights to worry about on the way here either.
ミオンと違って、シオンは待ち合わせ時間を守るな。しみじみ。
お姉を標準にされるといろいろと困ります。
少しフラフラしてないか？お前も昨夜は寝不足だろ。隠しても無駄だぞ。で、学校を早退したに違いない。
残念でした。私はそもそも今日はずる休みしてますので。
Take that, who goes to
お姉よ
school?
り容量いいですから。
おいおい、学校をずる休みするの要領いいとは言わないと思うぞ。
じゃあ先に用事を片付けます？時間もそんなにないですから。図書館へ行くんですよね。
ああ、頼むよ。おふくろの借りてる本の返却期限が今日までらしいんで。図書館は遠いのか？
すぐ近くですよ。
I meant it when I said we didn't have much time. I had to hurry a little. I was going to talk to him on the phone, but I ended up coming all the way to Okonomiya. After our talk, Keiichi would slowly head back to Hinamizawa on his bicycle. I'd have to rush back there while making sure I didn't run into him. Otherwise, I couldn't make it on time for the meeting. Maybe I could be a little late, and since I needed to hear everything they were going to discuss, I didn't want to be. This was the Shishibone Public Library. It was sizable, filled with a collection of moldy, smelly books. But they did have air conditioning, and it was quiet. It was the perfect place when you wanted to be alone. After Satoshi-kun disappeared last year, I came here a lot to think about various things. This was where I first met Takano-san. I didn't want to run into her with Keiichi in tow. Then I remembered that she was already dead. Lucky us! The first floor of the building was occupied by government offices. The library itself was on the second floor, so we had to walk up a huge staircase to get there. I tasted cool air on my skin as soon as I walked through the automated door. Unlike outside, it was very quiet in here. Room temperature was both comfortable and suitable for books. I could smell the scent of old pages.
どこの図書館も似たようなもんだな。
Keiichi walked up to the return table after he said so. Because it was a weekday, there was hardly anyone around. It really was very quiet. I was going to chat about some ordinary things, and then move on to the main subject. After Keiichi returned the books, I invited him to the inner section of the library. Keiichi knew Mion well, but he didn't know me at all. He showed an interest in our life story. This was exactly where Takano-san told me about the true history of Hinamizawa a year ago. I was about to tell Keiichi about some things that were very similar to that. Did God have a sense of irony?
言われてみれば、例のおもちゃ屋も親類の人が経営してるみたいだったな。そういえばエンジェルモートも親類の人が経営してるんじゃないのか？
I told him the reason why the Sonozaki family was so powerful in this area. I assumed that since Keiichi came from the city, there was a good chance he couldn't even begin to understand how one old family could literally control an entire area. It's called capitalism. Unless I explained to him how powerful the Sonozaki family was, he wouldn't understand what kind of danger was barreling toward
特
him.
に金融不動産関係は強いですね。あと商工会議所の役員も何割かは園崎姓かその親類がついてます。沖宮一帯を評伝に市議会議員と県議会議員にも園崎がいますし。
ちょっと待て。なんだかすごい話になってきたぞ。沖宮の町中に親類が経営する店があって、特に金融不動産に強い。しかもその上商工会議所の役員の何割かが親類で、しかも地元選出の議員までいて。
Keiichi counted with his fingers. He was clearly surprised to hear all that about the Sonozaki family. It seemed he was flexible enough to accept even some things that sounded outrageous to him. He was starting to understand things, although slowly. The way he viewed Shion Sonozaki was changing, little by little, too. That should be enough background info. Now I could go on to explain about Mion Sonozaki, the successor. Then I'd change the subject, like Takano-san did with me. I'd go on to talk about the curse of Oyashiro-sama, and then the series of mysterious deaths.
園崎家ってこの辺り一帯じゃすごいんじゃ。
ねえ、すごいんです。
A fat man with a cigarette suddenly cut into our conversation. You should not be smoking in the library. Oishi? Why was he
ど
here?
うも、こんにちは。今日はデートですかな？羨ましいですね。
そうだと思ったら邪魔しないでほしかったですね。おいさん。
What timing? Couldn't be coincidence. I knew this man too well. He was crafty, sly, and clever. His presence here just can't be a coincidence. Did he see us somewhere in town and follow us? But why? Did he need something from me, Keiichi, or perhaps the both of us? From what I could guess, I didn't think it was me that he wanted something from. It was almost like he was trying to keep Keiichi away from me. Oishi was aware I gave false testimony to protect Satoshi-kun last year. Maybe he didn't think he could talk to Keiichi if I was around. Why did Oishi need to talk to Keiichi? It must be about the incident from yesterday. I'm sure there were plenty of plain-clothes officers at the festival, so they had to have seen who was the last of the victims. Or who was last with the victims. In other words, Keiichi and me. Oishi knew I was hard to deal with. That was why he was focusing on Keiichi at present. Why did he have to show up at a time like this?
前原さんでしたよね。あなたもタフな人ですね。園崎姉妹を二股かけるなんて。
いや、そんな二股だなんて。
Keiichi looked at me, hoping for assistance. He blushed. The way he panicked reminded me of Satoshi-kun. That aside, this wasn't going well. Oishi might even start talking about my relationship with Satoshi-kun. I didn't want him to, nor did I want to give Keiichi any preconceptions. Oishi took a quick glance at me. His eyes told me something. He was purposefully talking about the things I'd rather not talk about. He was basically telling me to leave or he'd continue on to something that was worse than what we were already currently talking about. He didn't use words, but his eyes clearly communicated that anyway. Damn that big fat weasel.
ごめんなさい、ケイちゃん。私もうバイトの時間なんです。
あ、そうなのか？
I realized that I wouldn't achieve anything like this, even if I stayed longer. I would use my part-time job as an excuse to leave. Oishi looked at me and grinned. Damn it. He won today, but I'll win next time. Next time, Gadget.
そういえば今日はシオン、何か話があるんじゃなかったのか？なんなら
また今度。あ、バイトが終わったら電話します。夜なら電話大丈夫ですよね。
ああ、大丈夫だと思う。
じゃあ今夜電話しますので、その時に。じゃあ。
Bye. So once again, this kind of stuff is abbreviated a bit more because it's exactly how it played out in Game 2. So if you're missing sort of the context of what happened here, watch and or play the second game. The Hag's motorcycle had become my primary means of transportation. My next stop was the staff meeting at the Furude Shrine's Assembly Hall. It was easy to imagine how a normal meeting would play out if we were just celebrating the end of Watanagashi. But today's staff meeting was likely going to be as strained as the Sonozaki family councils. Yes, the staff meeting was going to deal with the heart of Hinamizawa. I couldn't let my guard down, even for a moment. I rested for a while at the house, then left for the meeting. I walked up the long stairs to the Furude Shrine. At the top, I saw some elderly men smoking in front of the hall. First boss of Wind Waker hype? Trying to think. The first boss of Wind Waker that you, I guess, actually... yeah. That wouldn't count the saving Terabit, so, that Voldu? The thing under Voldu? Since they had a minor fire a long time ago, it had been made into a non-smoking area. Maybe they should do that with the library. The head of the Kimiyoshi family, Uncle Kimiyoshi, noticed me and waved. Yeah, the bird is later. He's kind of like a recurring villain. You must not have experienced Mion to come alone. Normally it would have been either the hag by herself or Mion tagging along as an assistant. But yes, Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game of all time. They all understood how troublesome she was in a bad mood. They smiled bitterly in sympathy. You quite liked Twilight Princess. Yeah, Twilight Princess was pretty good. I guess my only gripe with Twilight Princess is I got the Wii disc that was part of the batch that had disc failures. So I was able to beat it, but then my brother couldn't because the disc failed. That's, I guess, the only gripe I have about it. Other than that, it's a pretty solid game.
じゃあ今日はミオンちゃんが園崎家当主代行ということでいいね。お嬢さんから話とか聞いてる？
一応。
What did he mean has Oreo-san told you anything? That line by itself didn't really explain much. The staff meeting was usually led by the mayor, the head of the Kimiyoshi family. And he asked me, as the substitute for the Sonozaki family head, if I'd heard anything from her. Then, I realized who was supposed to lead today's staff meeting.
じゃなくて、Kimiyoshiさん、今日の会合だけど、司会、私じゃないと。
According to the ranking order at the family councils, any substitute for the Sonozaki family head is above the Kimiyoshi family head. In other words, I'd have to lead today's meeting. There was no way I could do that.
大丈夫大丈夫。おじいちゃんがやるから。ミオンちゃんは座ってればいいよ。お嬢さんから聞いてる話があった。
You're playing the patch version from some of the HD versions of the GameCube? Okay.
村長、そろそろ始めますかいね。全員揃いましたね。
The smokers put out their cigarettes and went back into the hall. The tables were set up in a horseshoe shape, and I was told to sit next to the chair reserved for the chief. The seat opposite mine was empty. Considering its location, it was probably for the Furude family head, Rika Furude. But somebody had said earlier that everybody was already here. Either Rika-chama had called an absent, or the empty seat was just a formality. Knowing the subject of this meeting, I don't think that the Furude family head would even want to attend. Even if Rika-chama actually attended, she wouldn't be able to say anything. All she'd usually do at the Sonozaki family councils was draw pictures on a notepad. We'd probably end up drawing those pictures in this meeting, too. Besides, they probably didn't want her to hear anything unpleasant. In this way, the empty Furude family seat was easily explained. When everyone was seated, the head of the Women's Association served tea. She gave me an evil look, trying to tell me to help out. I got up, and did so. After that, everyone fell quiet, and the secretary stood up.
それでは皆さん、本日は大変お忙しい中、緊急にお集まりいただきまして、誠にお疲れ様です。それでは初めに、村長さんからご挨拶をいただきます。村長、どうぞ。
座ったままで失礼します。ケンちゃんも座ったままでいいよ。今日は平日の夕方にお集まりいただきまして、また昨日は綿流しを本当にお疲れ様でございました。おかげさまで本年も事故もなく大変な盛況のうちに終了させることができました。祭りにも村中から大勢がいらっしゃり、本当に素晴らしい祭りになったものと思うとります。来たの何人だっけ？大本営発表だと5000人だそうです。
Everyone laughed except me.
今後もますますの文化の向上のために一丸となって頑張ってまいりたいと思います。よろしくお願いいたします。
Clap, clap, clap. Applause with only 8 people doesn't sound so great.
それでは引き続き議事の方に入ってまいりたいと思います。本日の議事を君吉村長さんにお願いしようと思います。承認していただける方は拍手でご承認願います。
Clap, clap,
ありが
clap.
とうございます。それではただいま万座でのご承認をいただきましたんで、君吉村長さんに司会を譲りたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。
どうもケンちゃんお疲れ様。では司会を引き継ぎましたので、申し訳ない。カーテン閉めましょうかね。
Everyone closed the curtains nearest to them. The sun was still up. With all the curtains closed, the room became very dark. The village chief explained the details of the incident, as well as what went on with the police. A police vehicle discovered Tomitake-san's body on its way back to Okinomiya last night. Oishi's special curse unit was standing by, expecting something to happen for the 5th time, so they responded quickly. Since Tomitake-san and Takano-san were rarely apart, Oishi got in touch with the neighboring prefectural police departments and asked them to look for her. As a result, they found a burned body of a woman in the mountains of the Gifu prefecture. The body was then identified as Mio Takano. Considering the circumstances, the police ended up labeling the incident as the 5th of the ongoing series of mysterious deaths. When he finished, there was dead silence. Also, no one closed the curtains. I watched to see who would speak first. Nobody said a thing. Then I noticed Kimiyoshi-san looking at me. This is where the head of the Sonozaki family would speak.
お嬢さんは何か言ってたかい？
Everyone looked in my direction. I was sure they could see the hag in
園
me.
崎家当主代行園崎ミオンです。本日は当主お寮に代わりまして出席させていただきました。よろしくお願いいたします。
I became Mion. I tried to become as cold and unfeeling as the Mion I witnessed a year ago. That cold version of Mion was inside of me. That was me. I was her.
不幸にしてお社様のお怒りは
5年目にも下されることになりました。大変悲しいことです。
Everyone was held captive by my words. I wasn't a little girl anymore. Hag was speaking through my mouth. They all heard me and trembled in
どうして
fear.
今年もたたりがあったかわかる方はいますか？
After my question, everyone whispered to each
そ
other.
う。西宮殿の金を犯し、土足で聖域を踏み荒らして汚れを持ち込んだからです。
何いうことだ。
Few elderly men got up and yelled.
本当が信じられん小僧どもだ。
腹渡引き裂いても飽きたりんガキともじゃん。
お社様、お怒りをお鎮めください。
なんてこと、なんてこと。お社様、お社様。
これだからよそ者すっかん。なんも考えんねえ。ガクガクもないよ。
あれす。
So I think earlier Shion said that there were 8 people clapping, and we've already heard more than like 9 different voices, and that doesn't even include us and the mayor and the clerk. So I can only conclude from that a bunch of people don't clap. The angry old men yelled even as they trembled in fear. Their sudden change scared me more than a little. Even Uncle Kimiyoshi, who's usually so gentle and sweet, came like a demon of war, cursing those who broke the rule of the ritual storehouse. It had become like a raging ocean inside the assembly hall. Their yells spun about like a whirlpool. They roared, crashed, and howled. Even while doing nothing but watch, I could feel myself turning pale. Mion threatened me yesterday, and Kasai had been shocked this morning. What I saw before me was similar to that. Even the sweet and gentle Uncle Kimiyoshi was saying they deserved to die. I was fearful of the sudden change in those elderly men. More than anything, the fact that they all believed that those people deserved to die for trespassing is what terrified me. It wasn't just that, of course. The real thing I was scared of was that I was one of the people they wanted dead. In other words, it was almost like they were telling me to die of the curse. If they were to find out I snuck into the ritual storehouse, it was very possible they would strangle me on the spot. Actually, they might not kill me that easily. By then I was certain. The people in this room were true believers in Oyashiro-sama, just like the hag. They wouldn't hesitate to murder whoever made Oyashiro-sama angry on his behalf. Even if they didn't carry out the killings themselves, they would pretend they didn't see anything. Yes, not even if my head was cut off right in front of them. Everyone here would act in collusion and say I never attended today. They all testified that. If they waited and I didn't show, I'd be demoned away. It would be far too easy for them to erase someone and have them disappear. There was no mistake. The people linking the hag and the curse were definitely here at this meeting. I continued speaking. I was Mion Sonozaki. I was on the side responsible for the curse. Therefore, at that moment, I didn't need to worry about anything. Nobody could tell the difference between Mion and me. That's what would keep me safe.
お静かにお願いします。
ほら、静かに静かに。
Uncle Kimiyoshi helped me to quiet everyone, but his tone was violent. It really scared me. Everyone gradually became
西宮
silent.
殿に忍び込んだ賊は4人。あと2人います。
People once more became restless upon hearing that. But Uncle Kimiyoshi yelled at them again and they
富
settled
武
down.
さんと高野さんは分別のつくお年だったはずですからね。お社様のたたりが直ちに下りましたが、もう2人は子供です。まだたたりは免れていますが、何のけじめもなく許されることはありません。
Everyone stayed quiet that time. They had all turned genuinely pale, trying not to miss a word I said. After all, they were thinking that the kids I mentioned could be their own relatives, or even grandchildren. They wanted to know who they were to put their minds at
その
ease.
2人の狼藉者は、園崎紫音、そして前原圭一。
could feel the air getting drier. It was so dry, it almost felt like it was going to start making a crackling noise.
園崎シオンはすでに
I couldn't even hear the old people breathe. I took a peek at Uncle Kimiyoshi, who was sitting next to me. He'd adored Shion as if she were his own granddaughter. She had been demoned away. I wanted to see how distressed and sad he'd look. And when I saw his face, I felt a sensation on my back, as if my skin itself were making a crackling noise. He didn't even have an expression on his face. Uncle Kimiyoshi adored me. I loved him, and I thought he loved me too. That was why I expected him to be saddened after learning that I met with such a cruel fate. What was I thinking? The memory of his warm smile shattered inside of me. There was no way of describing the fear I experienced in that moment, in mere words. He had suddenly changed into someone I didn't even recognize. Uncle Kimiyoshi noticed me, looking at him, and spoke.
もう一人の前原圭一は
まだです。
I had to take a deep breath to regain my
債務伝
composure.
を犯した4人、すべてにお社様はたたりを下されるでしょう。前原圭一も例外ではありませんよ。
Chilling looks, cruel looks, emotionless looks, shrewd looks, and the looks of people who were about to snap. I could feel the demons chewing my words while they stared at me with their sharp eyes. I could see some of them sticking their snake-like tongues in and out. I could see flames in some of their eyes. They were memorizing the names of the intruders the curse had yet to fall upon. And so, the meeting went on. We were told not to tell the police too much, to report what they asked us, and hold another meeting when something of significance happened. If something unexpected took place, we were to get in touch with either the head of the Kimiyoshi family or the head of the Sonozaki family for instructions on what to do. Those closing remarks, the meeting was over. It was already getting dark outside. Being in a valley surrounded by mountains, once the sun went down in Hinamizawa, it got dark quickly. Even if it was hot during the day, it'd cool down quickly at night. The elderly people said goodbye to each other and left on their bicycles, on their motorcycles, or in their cars. Uncle Kimiyoshi waved them goodbye and started to head home himself. I called out to him.
君吉さん、この後ご予定はありますか？
I called him Kimiyoshi-san instead of Uncle Kimiyoshi. He stopped.
いや、何もないよ。
うちへ寄ってもらえませんか？
お嬢さんが呼んでるのかい？
はい。直接会って話したいことがあるんだとか。
じゃあ、やるかな。
Uncle Kimiyoshi arrived at the Sonozaki house. He often came to the house to have secret meetings with the hag, so he wasn't suspicious at all. I invited Uncle Kimiyoshi into the living room. I served him a cup of tea and told him I was going to fetch the hag. I left the room and killed some time down the hallway.
ばっちゃ、着替えたから来るそうです。ちょっと時間かかるかもです。
いやいや。ゆっくり待ってるから。
Uncle Kimiyoshi relaxed as he sipped his cup of tea. I sat next to
多
him.
分、シオンの話じゃないかなと思います。
うん。
I mentioned my name and watched for his reaction. Uncle Kimiyoshi looked so grim. I couldn't even tell if he heard me. I decided to continue speaking until he reacted in some
シ
way.
オンは去年がありますからね。北条家の人間なんかと懇意になるなんて。
去年は、爪を剥いで許してもらったんだったね。
ええ、3枚剥いで。
Uncle Kimiyoshi folded his arms and thought for a while.
シオンちゃんは今は
地下にいます。
様子はどうなんだい？
Uncle Kimiyoshi sounded worried. When I heard that, I felt relieved that Uncle Kimiyoshi was on my side. His anger in the assembly hall was just an
ずっ
act.
と泣いていますよ。
ミオンちゃん、率直なところ、お嬢さんはシオンちゃんのことをどうするって言ってるんだ？
具体的なことは聞いてません。ご存知と思いますけど、バッチャは怒りが度を超えると逆に無口になりますからね。
西宮殿に入ったんだもんな。しかも自分とこの身内がな。そりゃそうだろうな。
Uncle Kiyoshi thought that the hag must be unsure of what to do with
おじい
Shion.
ちゃんはシオンの処遇どうなると思います？
そりゃ爪3枚よりもっとむごいことになるだろうな。お嬢さんのことだから身内に甘くするってことはないと思う。むしろ身内だからこそ厳しく当たるだろうからな。
何しろ西宮殿に入ったんですものね。それは許されないことでしょうね。
さすがにな。西宮殿はな。
でもシオンもかわいそうかもしれません。だってずっとひなみ沢から遠ざけられてきたんです。西宮殿の不可侵性は知ってはいたでしょうが、そこまでいけないことだという認識は多分なかったんでしょうから。
確かにシオンちゃんは不憫だよな。
あたしかシオンか。背中の入れ墨を見る以外に私たちをどんな方法で区別できるというのですか？何もない。ミオンとシオンなんて区別自体が何の意味もないのに。
Twins are proof of bad luck. One should be eliminated as soon as they are born. Such is the family precept. Hag actually put her hands around my neck right after I came out of the womb. That's how the story went, at least. In the end, the hag didn't kill me. Instead pretended I didn't exist. She forced herself to call one of us Mion and the other Shion. She adored Mion and hated Shion. My sister and I never understood why we had to go through that. We didn't care who was Mion or Shion. So one day, we came up with an idea. We decided to share the joy Mion experienced and the sadness Shion experienced. We often switched places. We were both Mion, and at the same time, we were both Shion. Adults around us tried to put different clothes on us or style our hair differently so they could tell us apart. That was nonsense. No matter what they did to us, all we had to do was switch places and nobody could tell us apart. Finally, they decided that we switched places because we were always together. On that day, Shion got to go to an amusement park. Since then, we've been separated.
ミオンちゃん、
私にはシオンがどういう処遇になるか想像もつきません。そしてどんなことに決まっても意見できる立場にありません。バッチャは身内であればむしろ意見を聞かない人ですし。
そうだな。お嬢さんの悪いところだよ。
シオンは園崎シオンでなければとっくに殺されていたことでしょう。死に準ずる罰が果たしてどのようなものか私には想像もつきません。殺されなかったにしたって多分一生日の光を見ることはできないでしょう。つまりは鬼隠しということかと。
ミオンちゃん、シオンちゃんは反省してるんだろ？
ええ。
In response, Uncle Kiyoshi tapped my shoulder and slapped his own chest. He smiled reliably.
大丈夫。シオンちゃんがちゃんと反省してるなら鬼隠しなんかなるもんか。君吉のおじいちゃんに任せなさい。
本当に大丈夫なんですか？
そりゃあお嬢さんは私に意見されたら怒りはするだろうけどさ。でもおじいちゃんは引かないよ。シオンちゃんがしっかり反省してるんだから許してあげてほしいってちゃんと頼んでみせるから。
Tears began to fall from my eyes. I knew it. Uncle Kiyoshi was my ally after all. He said he would forgive Shion. He was my ally. I was so very
本当
happy.
に大丈夫でしょうか？去年の北条聡くんみたいに鬼隠しになっちゃったりしないでしょうか？
Uncle Kiyoshi smiled reliably again and told me.
罰当たりの北条家の坊主ならいざ知れず、園崎家のしおんちゃんならきっと許してもらえるって。
Huh?
北条家の坊主ってサトシ君のことですか？去年の犠牲者の。
北条の連中は仕方ないさ。村を丸ごと売ろうとした売国と同然の奴らだ。そういう奴らなら鬼隠しだってありえるだろうけど、そりゃあ北条家だからの話だよ。北条家の連中は一族老頭みんな呪われて当然だ。鬼隠しに会うのはそういう連中なんだから。だからしおんちゃんは大丈夫。大丈夫なんだよ。
おじいちゃん、でもサトシ君は去年シオンがけじめをつけたから見逃してもらえることになったんじゃないの？
けじめ？なんの？
ほら、爪を3枚剥いだじゃないですか。葛西さん、吉郎おじさん、それからサトシ君で3人分3枚。
3枚ってそういう意味だったのかい？
Huh? What?
3枚はそういう意味じゃなかったんですか？
いや、合ってるよ。関わった人間が3人だから3枚の爪でけじめとしたんだよ。そう私も聞いてるよ。
でも
葛西さん、吉郎さん、それからしおんちゃんで3枚だと聞いてたよ。
What? What? Huh? What? I endured excruciating pain. First one was my left pinky, then the ring finger, then the middle finger. People held me down so I couldn't move, but I endured. I had to endure 3 nails. I didn't know which nail was for Satoshi-kun. My middle finger was for Satoshi-kun. I'd have to endure until the middle finger was done so that Satoshi-kun would be forgiven. That was why I endured. Even Mion said afterwards, everything was forgiven. Huh? Huh? Mion, didn't you say Satoshi-kun was forgiven? Didn't you? That's what I heard. I think that's what I heard. Or did I? Huh? I felt the air move. There shouldn't have been a breeze in that room, but I felt it anyway. The cool air stroked the back of my neck. That was when my true self stood right behind me and nodded. Although there was no wind, my hair billowed. The burning wickedness buried deep inside my eyes became visible.
どうして北条サトシ君は鬼隠しにあったのでしょう？サトシ君のご両親は確かに村を売ろうとしました。お社様のたたりがあったのは当然です。でもサトシ君はその両親の子供であっただけ。そのサトシ君にどんな罪が？
ミオンちゃん？
サトシ君にどんな罪があったのかと尋ねています。あなたはさっき罰当たりな北条家の坊主なら鬼隠しにあっても当然と言いました。鬼隠しにあっても当然などんな罪があったのかと聞いているのです。
Kimiyoshi didn't know what to say to the sudden question. He seemed dismayed.
聞かずともわかります。園崎お涼が決めたのです。お社様のたたりが及ぶのは北条の姓を持つすべての人間と決めたから。
待ってミオンちゃん、別にそういうことが決まってるわけじゃない。
決めたわけではないのですか？
そうだよ、そんなことを決めたことなんかない。北条家にはお社様のたたりがいずれ下る。そういう話をおぼろげにしたことはあっても、 そんなにはっきりとしたことを言及したことは一度もないし。
ではさっきあなたが口にした「法」という言葉は何を根拠に出たものなのですか？
ごめんよミヨンちゃん。あれは言い過ぎたよ。謝る。
そういうことです。北条家なら何があってもたたり、北条の名を冠していればどうなろうが知ったことではないという、そういう考えが蔓延していることが問題なのです。サトシ君に罪があろうがなかろうが、北条という姓があればそれで汚らわしい、そういう考えが蔓延していることが問題なのです。そしてあなたはその蔓延でいぶされた汚れた思考に汚染された迷信盲信、許せない、お前のような存在が許せない、お前のような奴がサトシ君たち一家を追い詰めてあんなにもすり
This is automatically advancing because Shion's talking so fast.
何もしてない、何もやってない、ただ北条であっただけ。それにどんな罪が罰がたたりが呪いがどうして降りかからねばならなかったのか、一体サトシ君に何の罪があったというのか。
Wah! Miyoshi's upper body bent backwards and fell onto the floor. That was that. I put my stun gun back in my pocket.
ごめん、シオン。今、なんて言った？
ゆうべ、高野さんと富武さんが死んだんだそうです。高野さんは焼死体で、富武さんは自殺みたいな感じで。今朝知ったんです。お父さんが親類の人からの電話で話してるのを聞いて。
As I thought, Keiichi didn't know anything about what happened after the festival
マ
last
スコ
night.
ミに報道されないのは当然なんです。過去にそうだったから。
Keiichi insisted that unless he heard about it on the news, it couldn't be real. But the investigations into the series of mysterious deaths are done in secret now. Of course he didn't hear about it on the
村長
news.
とか、あと園崎家出身の金バッジが警察に思いっきり圧力をかけたんだって聞いてます。
じゃあ、つまり、二人の死は秘密裏に処理されてしまったということか。
そういうことです。もちろん警察は捜査をしてますよ。でも秘匿捜査ということなので、捜査活動にはかなりの制限が加えられているそうです。これは事実上の捜査妨害と言えるでしょうね。
信じられない。人が死んだのに、それが公にされず、ひそやかに処理されるなんて。
もっと噛み砕いて言うと、綿流しの夜に誰が死んでも公にはならないということです。
そんなバカな話があってたまるか。
ケイちゃん、私以前にお社様のたたりは村人が起こしてるかもしれないって言いましたよね。つまりそういうことなんです。このひなみ沢では毎年綿流しの夜にお社様のたたりということにして誰かを殺してもいい土壌がいつの間にか作り上げられているんです。
Yes, that's the truth about the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa, also known as Oyashiro-sama's curse. On the day of the Watsunagashi, 2 people will be killed. The perpetrators are using the curse of Oyashiro-sama as an excuse to kill one victim and make another disappear. That's why the curse of Oyashiro-sama takes place. That's what happens in Hinamizawa. That's what happens with the curse. Imiyoshi said is all true. Infecting everyone with the idea that the enemy from the damn conflict deserved to die was the root of all this. That was the system of vague commands used in the Sonozaki family, created by its head Oryo. One thing that must be mentioned about that command system is that the person giving the orders and one executing them didn't need to interact in any way. Oryo was the commander. She never gave actual orders. She only had to expect something to happen. Every single one of the family council members around her would want to satisfy that expectation if given the chance. They didn't have to be proactive about satisfying it. They could be passive too. But when the chance arose, anyone who knew Orio's intentions could potentially become the one to execute her orders. Therefore, Oryo would never know who actually executed her order, and none of the relatives knew it either. But they all knew things would conclude just as Oryo wanted. They could assume that was one of their own who did it for her. This passive support system was thoroughly effective, and it spread all over the village. Its ties became even tighter after the dam conflict. anyone could be the one to execute Orio's orders. Therefore, everyone supported each other. If someone did something, then the others would try to satisfy Orio's expectation in different ways. For example, they'd come up with false evidence or otherwise passively interfere with an investigation. Even if they didn't know who exactly they were protecting, they'd still work together to protect whoever it was. Yes, I'd finally figured out how it all worked. Phrased in a more organized manner, it would go as follows. The system of killing two people who are unwanted by the village each year requires 3 elements. The first element was a region of solidarity. It was created during the long and unique history of Hinamizawa. The villagers' bonds became even tighter during the dam conflict. That was one of the conditions for this place to have a curse. It was an element that was already in the region, not one that could be created. The next element was having the same moral standards, aka none. This was a very important element, as the curse wouldn't have happened without it. Also, this element was created by Orio Sonozaki herself, and that's why she could claim that the system was established by her own will. Having the same moral standards means that everyone everywhere acknowledges the same enemy. Even when everyone in the village joined together, it would be meaningless if they didn't know exactly who the enemy was. During the dam conflict, Orio Sonozaki made the identity of the enemy very clear to everyone. They couldn't just say that they were against the dam construction and that the government was their enemy. That wasn't clear enough. The government didn't really pinpoint who the enemy was. Orio made enemies out of the construction site itself, and therefore its manager. He chose targets that the villagers could see with their own eyes. They were clear and easy to understand. The villagers acknowledged that everyone at the dam construction site was their enemy, and that the construction site manager was the enemy commander. Using the same method, she labeled one after another as an enemy of the village, practically cataloging a list of enemies to print into the villagers' minds. Earlier, I'd used the term infecting for this phenomenon. Those infected by this idea were the people unconsciously giving the orders to commit murder. When the infection spread across the village, when all of Hinamizawa's residents acknowledged the same enemy, that's when Hinamizawa itself became a murderer. Orio combined these 2 elements, a solidary region and having the same moral standards, then selected the enemy and spread that notion throughout the village. The law would normally have punished both the one who committed the crime and the one who gave the order, but Orio's system didn't require an order at all. Orio just had to become concerned about the enemy she had pre-selected. That alone wouldn't cause the curse to take place. Orio's concern was like a safety device. Even when the safety device was off, the curse wouldn't occur unless there was a finger to pull the trigger. The last necessary element was to set a date for execution, the night of Watanagashi, the night to venerate Oyashiro-sama, the guardian deity of Hinamizawa. On that night, the curse of Oyashiro-sama falls upon 2 enemies of the village, and they disappear. Everyone in the village acknowledged that as fact. In other words, if the same incident took place on any of the other 364 nights of the year, it would be nothing other than a murder case. But if it happened on the night of Watanagashi, then it would transform into the curse of Oyashiro-sama. The idea that the villagers are allowed to kill their enemies on the night of Watanagashi had infected them. The villagers were the cells of this huge creature called Hinamizawa, and each cell would be taught who the enemy was. The set date was basically a green light for whoever was in the best position to kill the enemy. That was the truth of the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Therefore, the one who actually killed Satoshi-kun isn't my enemy. The one who set up this murderous system, and the one who named Satoshi-kun's family as the enemy, is my enemy. To use a broader definition, Hinamizawa itself, and the very system of Oyashiro-sama's curse is my enemy. I already killed the hag, the one who designed the system. Kimiyoshi, the one whose job it was to infect the villagers with the system, was already in my hands. I just had to find who else was involved, and how much. It was like pulling a weed while being very careful not to break its roots. I announced that Keiichi Maeburo was one of the people who snuck into the shrine storage. I was certain that fact had already spread throughout the underside of the village. In other words, Keiichi Maibara was an object of the curse of Oyashiro-sama now. Kano-san and Tomitake-san were found dead, having been killed in gruesome ways. That was the curse of Oyashiro-sama. In that case, they could be demoned away, 2 more people as sacrifices to calm the anger of Oyashiro-sama. The set date for the curse was already over. Just like what happened to Satoshi-kun, demoning away was allowed a little extra time. Something would happen to Keiichi Maibara within a few days. I'd wait patiently, careful not to let my enemy simply take Keiichi Maibara, my bait. Keiichi had been yelling on the other end of the phone for some time, and we've just been ignoring him. He kept yelling that he didn't want to go into the ritual storehouse to begin with. He claimed he was simply invited by Takano-san and me. He shouldn't be in danger because of that, he said. He was feeling a sense of crisis and tension. This was going to work. The livelier the bait, the easier it is to spot. Shut up, I've heard enough of your pitiful tears. I hung up the phone. There was no point in talking to him when he got like that. Besides, I'd already achieved my goal, which was to make him realize the danger awaiting him. I took a deep breath, then called the house of the village chief.
Hey. Kimiyoshi desu.
園崎です。どうです？村長さんは見つかりましたか？
ああ、ミオンちゃんか。片っ端から電話をかけてみたけど、ダメだよ。見つからないんだ。参ったな。どこで油売ってるのかな。
こっちでも心当たりにいろいろと問い合わせましたけど、全然。バッチャにも相談したんですが、青年団を招集して探し回った方がいいだろうということです。
こんな時間にかい？それに別に行方不明になったと決まったわけでもないし。
綿流しの直後ですから、少し慎重に扱った方がいいとのことです。それでも見つからないなら、明朝警察に通報しましょう。見つかる見つからないは別にして、痛くない腹を探られない方がいいでしょうから。
お嬢さんがそう言ったのかい？
はい。直接声を聞かないと信用できないなら電話。
いえ、わかりました。青年団を集めて探しましょう。それで見つからなければ翌朝に警察に通報します。
青年団の連絡もよろしくお願いしますね。私もバッチャの代行ということでそちらに参ります。
ありがとう。すぐにみんなを集めます。
ええ。では。
The youth group had gathered at the Furude shrine. They were going to try to find the mayor. I also had to go, in the absence of the hag. Just to be mean, I stopped by the underground torture room to let the mayor know that I was headed to the Furude shrine to search for him. Incidentally, according to the tab on the keychain, this underground torture room was actually called the Underground Storehouse for Ritual Implements. This was the man who was yelling that whoever trespasses on the ritual storehouse should be killed. Although it was an underground ritual storehouse, he was there now, atoning for what he had done. It was pretty ironic. Maybe I was the only one who felt that way, though.
Kimiyoshiのおじいちゃん、お具合はいかがですか?
Clink. Miyoshi didn't say a word, but he made a noise with the chain.
今ね、村中でおじいちゃんの姿が見えなくなったって大騒ぎしてますよ。おじいちゃんの家から相談が来たので、青年団を招集して捜索を行うことにしました。これから行ってくるところです。
Was this mean or what? Miyoshi could only make noise with the chain. He couldn't even express any emotion other than anguish.
鎖、少し長くしてあげましょうか。私の質問にちゃんと答えてくれるたびに、そうですね。鎖の輪っか1個分長くしてあげます。あと3個も長くなれば、だいぶ楽になると思うんですけどね。
Kimiyoshi's hands were tied behind his back with a tight wire. He was wearing a leather collar with a chain which was strapped tightly around his neck, too. The collar's chain was on a pulley attached to the ceiling, with the chain pulling him up toward it. The chain was very short and pulled very tight. Kimiyoshi had to stand on tiptoes to be able to breathe. He had been like that for almost an hour already. He was already exhausted. If I left him overnight, he'd probably end up hanging himself.
さっきは知らないと言われましたけど、もう一回尋ねます。北条聡君について知っていることを教えてください。ああ、ごめんなさい。喋りたくても喋れません？じゃあ、私とおしゃべりの間だけちょっと緩めましょう。
I turned the pulley just a little to loosen the chain that was pulling on Kimiyoshi's neck. Kimiyoshi's heels finally touched the ground, relieving the pressure on his
知
muscles.
らないんだよ、シオンちゃん。本当に知らないんだ。
サトシ君が生きてるのか死んでるのか、それ。
おじいちゃんは本当に何も知らないんだよ。
ま、ひなみ沢のたたりのシステムはそういう部分で機密性を保持していますからね。おじいちゃんが知らないというのもありえなくはないことです。なら聞き方を変えます。サトシ君がどうなってるのか、君吉家当主の立場でご意見を伺いたいです。サトシ君は生きてる？死んでる？
Miyoshi didn't know what to say. He said he didn't know. I'd tighten the chain and leave the room. That would be like a death sentence for him. But all I said was that I wanted him to speak as the head of the Kimiyoshi family. I didn't ask him to tell the truth. But he didn't know what to say to avoid souring my mood and to get me to loosen the chains around him. He was obviously trying to figure out how to make me extend the chain.
生きてるんじゃないかって噂を聞いたことがある。
ああ、新幹線で東京にってやつですね。
警察が東京で姿を見たというようなのを聞いた覚えが。
I wish he'd told me that Satoshi-kun had been witnessed getting on a bullet train heading to Tokyo at Nagoya Station. But the police didn't know if that really happened, or what became of Satoshi-kun after that. Therefore, this was simply a random assertion of Kimiyoshi's.
君吉家の当主様、呪われた一族、北条家の人間をわざわざ失踪なんていう凝った消し方をしていて、わざわざ生かしておくのにどんな理由があるんです？ないんじゃないですか？それに、その東京で警察が見たという情報ソースを教えてください。私は大石と一時期連絡を密にしていましたが、そんなのは聞いたことないです。おじいちゃん、私の機嫌を取ろうとしていい加減なことを言ったなら、かえって怒っちゃいますよ。
I reached for the pulley, controlling the chains around Kimiyoshi. That act alone sent him panicking as he feared them tightening once more.
ごめんよ。別にシオンちゃんを怒らせようなんてつもりはないんだよ。謝るよ。
私、ご機嫌取りの話なら聞きたくないんで。君吉のおじいちゃんにサトシ君のことを調べる協力をお願いしてるだけなんです。
わかってる。ちゃんと真面目に考えるから。
I took my hand off of the pulley. Seeing that, Kimiyoshi began making loud groaning noises to try and show he was thinking
ズ
hard.
バリ、生きていると思いますか？死んでいると思いますか？
生きてると考えるのは難しいんじゃないかと思う。
ですよね。生かしておくことで伴う膨大なリスクを負う意味ないですもんね。私だって同感ですし。
I really didn't mean anything too deep by it, but what I said truly scared
警
Kimiyoshi.
察はおば殺しの犯人がサトシ君で、サトコの誕生日プレゼントを買うために貯めてた貯金で逃亡したと、そう考えてました。
Take off my sweater and move it up here. There we go.
この辺どう思います？
でもその犯人は確か麻薬中毒の危ないやつだと聞いたよ。
あれ、どう思います？私は私がこう言うのも変だけど、サトシ君がおば殺しの犯人だって信じてるんですよ。あいつは例えばばあさんあたりに買収されて仕立て上げられた身代わりじゃないかと思うんですけど。
それはおじいちゃんも思ってたよ。突然ひょっこりと真犯人でしたなんて言われて 腑に落ちなかった。
やっぱり身代わり？
多分そうじゃないかと思うよ。
何のためにだと思います？
警察はサトシ君が犯人だと思って捜査を進めてたんだよね。サトシ君を鬼隠しということで失踪させておきたいと思うなら、警察の捜査がいつまでも続くのは面白くなかったんじゃないかな。
What Kimiyoshi just said is very interesting. It's perfectly correct. If the police continued their investigation, it would complicate things for whomever demoned away Satoshi-kun. Therefore, the hag came up with a decoy in order to bring an end to the investigation.
そんな犯人のでっち上げなんてそうそう簡単にできることじゃないですよ。
お嬢さん以外にはできないよ、そんなことは。
ばあさんが裏の世界で相当の力を持ってるというのはそんなにもあったんですね。
シオンちゃんだっていろいろとダム戦争の頃から噂は聞いてるだろうし、中には実際に直接聞いたものもあるんじゃないかい？
During the dam protests, I actually saw them issuing orders to my relatives, like destroy their heavy machinery, or we set up a checkpoint to blockade their construction vehicles. They set free their comrades from the police by coming up with alibis, destroying or forging evidence. I had seen relatives do those things, as well as the hag calling in counselors to the house to protest. As a child, I was pretty impressed. When I thought back, it was more than that. She was truly the mastermind who controlled the underside of the world.
シオンちゃんだって建設省の幹部の息子というか建設大臣の孫だな。あれの誘拐事件の話は知ってるだろう。
あれってやっぱ誘拐だったんですか？孫が鬼隠しになって高津戸だか矢河内だかの山奥で見つかったって話は知ってたんですけどね。
あれはお嬢さんの指図によるものだよ。ダム工事の中止の約束が取り付けられたんで孫を釈放したっていうのは、おじいちゃんたち旧同盟の幹部ならみんな知ってる。
身近にいすぎて私がよく分かってなかっただけで、やっぱりばあさんとか御三家とか旧同盟って大したもんだったんですね。怖い怖い。
Kimiyoshi finally realized the situation he was in, and he was answering my questions. That made me happy, but the more Kimiyoshi told me the truth, the more I realized Satoshi-kun really was dead. That made me very sad.
サトシ君を
わからないよ。それに誰が実際にやったかは問わないのが不分律だったから。
He was right. That was how the system worked, and so that was a bad
誰が
question.
やったにせよ大したものですよね。だって人を殺して死体も出てこないなんて結構簡単なことじゃないんじゃないですか？
誰が殺したかは別にして、例えば死体の処理をお嬢さんが手伝ったという可能性は考えられるよ。今いるここの奥に死体を捨てるための井戸があることは
Oh, cool. The well, we're
知
gonna
ってるだ
throw
ろう。
you down, old man.
ああ、確かにどこかの山中に埋めるくらいならここの井戸に捨てる方が絶対に安全ですもんね。
Whoever disappears becomes a sacrifice to calm the anger of Oyashiro-sama. That was the rule of this game. Therefore, the bodies must never be discovered. That's why the bodies had to be dumped somewhere nobody could find them. Very possible that the well was used for that. Then Satoshi-kun is at the bottom of that well? I grabbed a flashlight and headed to the huge cave with all the cells. As I turned on the lights in the cave, Mion noticed me and gave me a worried look. I ignored her and headed to the cell in the back. I was still very impressed by how the well was hidden. It was almost artistic. I shone the flashlight at the bottom of the well. I had no way of knowing how deep the well was. The light of the flashlight wasn't strong enough to reach the bottom. I inhaled, then screamed into the well. Satoshi-kun's name echoed again and again. It was obviously a very deep well. I thought of climbing down using the wedges on the wall, but the flashlight hang from my neck. Couldn't light my footing properly. And even if there was enough lighting, I didn't even know if the wedges were sturdy enough. It would be like committing suicide. Satoshi-kun was at the bottom of this well. That's when I felt it. A warm hand rubbed my head for sure. Shion finally found me. Satoshi-kun. 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 I've been looking for you for so long. I'm sorry I couldn't find you while you were still alive. Sorry. I'm sorry. Not your fault, Shion. There's nothing you could have done before I was killed. But you did everything you could do after I was dead. Satoshi-kun, I want to join you. Coming right now. I'm going to jump, so please catch me. Satoshi-kun smiled bitterly. I was saddened to see him reject me. Shion, I'm happy that you found me. That you are alive, Shion. It's so important to be alive, you can't waste it. You aren't here. I don't want to live. I want to be with you, Satoshi-kun. I want to be close to you. I want you to rub my head again. I want to spend time with you. I'll be a good girl. I want to be with you. Live. Do I have to? Live and enjoy your life, okay? What's so fun about living alone? You'll find out, so long as you're alive.
生きる。生きるよ。生きる。
The eerie well now felt warm. I wasn't allowed to go down to the bottom, but the edge of this well was the place where you and I could meet.
Mion, Satoshi-kun, 見つけた。井戸の底なんだね。そうだと思う。そこしかないもん。
Mion started to
ミオン
sob.
はサトシ君が殺されるところには居合わせなかったんだよね。うん。もし居合わせたらサトシ君を許してもらえるようばあさんに意見してくれたかな。絶対にする。せめて命だけはって絶対に言うよ。
嘘だ。
え？嘘だー！
On that day, a year ago, I just recalled how cruel Mion was then. She forced me to rip out my nails, acting in her role as the successor. Even if she was there when Satoshi-kun was killed, she wouldn't have stopped being the successor. Satoshi-kun was brought to the torture room. When he saw Mion, I'm sure he thought she would save him. Even as he heard the family head read out his death sentence, I'm sure he looked at Mion and believed that she would save him. He believed Mion was acting that way only because she was with her relatives. He believed she would help him, but she didn't do anything. He was strapped to a restraining device, yet she still wouldn't do anything. Mion was cruel. Mion? Isn't it about time to help me? I see. I get it. You're with the rest of the family members, so you can't even show a hint of compassion. That sucks.
でもね、それだけの努力じゃサトシ君を救うには全然足りなかった。届かなかった。どうしてか。だって私はシオンだったんだもん。シオンは南沢から遠ざけられていて、何からも戸ざまで何も教えられなくて知らなくて。でもあんたは違う。あんたはミオンだった。あんたは南沢のうちにいて、全ての中心で全てを教えられて全てを知ることができた。私があんただったらきっとサトシ君を救えた。私なら救ってあげられた。あんたがミオンになったからだ。返してミオン。もともとミオンはあんただけのもんじゃない。私のものでもあったはず。それにもともとミオンは私のじゃない。私があんたに貸してあげるようになっただけで、本当は私のだったじゃない。返せ。私のミオンを返せ。
Okay, this bit right here is actually something that got dropped out of the anime, and I really think it shouldn't have been. So, this whole time when they were kids, Mion and Shion traded places so that they could both experience the good and bad stuff of their family. At one date and time, they decided they were going to decide who was who, and gave Mion a tattoo and took Shion away. What they didn't know is that at that time, Mion was Shion and Shion was Mion. So, the Shion we've been playing with and the Mion we've been playing with have actually been reversed since about age 5. So Shion's outburst right here is basically saying, I would have done it, and it should have been me, because I was Mion to begin with, not you. And this was something that got left out of the anime, and I really wish it wasn't.
お前がミオンの外見をしているだけでもブツが走る。お前じゃなく私がミオンだったら、
I kicked the bars. I kicked them again and again. Mion curled up fearfully in the back of the cell, as if she were trying to prevent the bars from crashing down onto her. Okay, that was that chapter. It was actually longer than I thought. I don't even know if we're going to get through 2 chapters tonight, but we'll see what we can do. We got one tip, notebook page 188, which I think is for the day after. Or it's later that evening. There we go. After that, I joined the youth group in the search for Kimiyoshi. I went down the town's council's phone directory and called to see if he had visited, and then the group split according to the circular notice divisions, and sent them to search the town. Everybody seemed to be assuming they wouldn't find him. But since I knew they definitely never would, it was just bothersome to me. Even after midnight, they were all still enthusiastically looking for him. I bore the sleepiness while yawning. Then I heard somebody whisper. Last year, we did the same thing when Satoshi Hojo-kun went missing. The youth group was looking for someone who would never be found, just like last year. I was yawning because I knew this. Last year, there must have also been some people who were yawning and grinning on the inside.
去年の捜索って何時に終わりましたっけ？
あ？北条んとこのサトシん時かい？あれは何時だったっけ？
午前の0時過ぎぐらいには解散したような気がするな。
It was already 2 in the morning. Although they spent this much time searching for Kimiyoshi, they didn't do the same when Satoshi-kun went missing. After all, some people knew they wouldn't find him. They must have been sleepy. They must have said they should just leave it to the police. Shit. I wanted to kill the people who said that. Okay. That was quick and to the point. Alright. We'll see how far we get in this chapter. As I said, I think tonight's going to go a little bit later by about 15-ish minutes, but if all the remaining chapters are about that long, we might have 3 or 4 more streams left.
みーちゃんもなんだか寝不足な感じだよ。
寝たの3時くらいだからね。眠い。
3時？おいおい、夜更かしにも限度ってもんがあるぞ。大方漫画の単行本が面白くなっちゃって一巻から読破してしまったんだろう。俺にも経験があるぞ。
あれ、ひょっとして村長さんのこと？まだ見つかってないの？
Went to the Fruit Age Shrine to join the youth group in their search for the mayor. So I knew there was no way he'd be found. It was really boring for me. Well, just enduring sleepiness wasn't that bad. Not if you consider what Kimiyoshi had to go through since last night. He'd been hanging from the cell and couldn't even fall asleep or sit down, since he had to stay on his tiptoes the whole time. The teacher explained to us that the mayor had gone missing and asked us if we knew anything. A couple of people said some things, but they were irrelevant. To me, this issue meant nothing. It was all my classmates were talking about. I observed Keiichi Maibara. I had no idea if any type of danger was drawing closer to him. Maybe I'd call him again tonight, pretending to be Shion. I love how we're now pretending to be ourselves. That's the kind of state we're at right now. I told him some outrageous stuff last night, so he panicked. But I was sure he'd calm down after a day. At that time, I heard a little girl's laughter. It was Rika Furude, the last survivor of the Furude family and their current head. However, he wasn't really treated as one. During the family council, she'd often draw pictures or take a nap in the hag's bed. She wasn't even invited to last night's meeting. It was hard to believe such a little girl was responsible for part of the curse system. However, even though she wasn't in a respected position as the head of the Furude family, there were plenty of old people who worshipped her as the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama. I'd heard from someone that Rika Furude was rather odd and seemed to behave as if she knew she was that reincarnation. Maybe Takano-san had told me that at the library when she was alive. When Rika Furude became worried about something, the elderly people who worshipped her would make arrangements. It was very similar to the Sonozaki family. It was also the same system as used for the curse. I wondered, does Rika Furude know anything about the deaths of Takano-san and Tomitake-san? What does she think of people sneaking into the ritual storehouse? Does she know who snuck in and what happened to those people? As the one managing the storehouse, it was possible that she noticed the intruders first. In fact, she was the only person who could have noticed it. She must have passed on that information, which is why the curse was executed. That foolish Keiichi turned the light on when he went into the ritual storehouse. That light switch could have been connected to some kind of alarm. Rika Furude, the leader of the Furude family. Maybe getting to know her would be a good idea.
Furude家当主として、今回の件はどこまで知ってるの?
I asked her rather directly. It's hard to tell if she understood I was asking her in place of the Sonozaki family head, instead of as Mion Sonozaki. Rika answered. The news hadn't been made public, yet she knew about it. Although she looked immature, perhaps she truly was the head of the Furude family.
そんなのは分かってるよ。ならまだ終わってないよね。あと2人残っている。その2人はどうなるか聞いてる?
I tried to be vague to see how Rika Furude would act. I'd been thinking that she had nothing to do with the underside of Hinamizawa, since she was always treated like a child. However, Rika just said things about the incident which normal people shouldn't know anything about. That proved that she belonged to the Underside's network.
別にどうでもいいと思いますですよ。
She answered the question about Tomitake-san and Takano-san fairly quickly, but it took a little longer to answer this time. Did she have to think about it? Shit, the look on her face never changes. It's impossible to figure out what she's thinking.
どうでもいいってことはないでしょ。それじゃあけじめにならないのは分かってる。
僕はちゃんと反省したなら それでいいと思いますです。
Her response was unexpected, especially after seeing all the old people get so furious last night. The trespass in the ritual storehouse was blasphemy against Oyashiro-sama. Village elders had said those intruders deserved to die, yet the leader of the Furude family, who protected the sacred storehouse for ritual implements, said if they felt remorse for it, then that was fine. I recalled how people thought of Rika Furude's father during the dam conflict. Yes, her father was called an opportunist back then. He didn't agree with the Onigafuchi guardians who had resisted violently during the conflict. Like father, like daughter. I aggressively grabbed Rika Furude by the collar.
何をひよったことを言ってんだか。フルデ家は先代もあんたもつくづく甘ったるいね。あんたたちフルデ家が西宮殿がいかに神聖で不可侵な聖域か一番理解してなくちゃならないんだよ。そのフルデ家の仮にも当主が何を甘ったるいことを言ってるわけ。
I laughed at myself. I was told the same thing by someone else, and was now saying it to Rika.
西宮殿を犯した罪がどれほどの大罪か理解してないわけじゃないんでしょ。
西宮殿はお社様の大切な場所なのです。勝手に入ったりとかしちゃダメなとこなのです。
分かってるじゃない。そこに汚れを持ち込んだんだよ、あの4人は。
悪い猫さんなのです。にゃー。
そうだね、悪い猫だ。2匹は捕まえてお仕置きした。あと2匹いる。
にゃ
ー。どうけじめをつけるべきだろうね。フルデ家当主のご意見を聞かせてよ。
Rika really didn't usually wear any expression whatsoever, making it impossible to tell what she was thinking. Well, I grabbed her by the collar and stared at her. I could tell somehow. Rika was a little disturbed. I sensed she was trying to see what I was thinking in turn.
僕は2匹の猫さんは許してあげたいです。
それでけじめになると思ってんの？
けじめって言葉が僕にはよくわからないです。
ああ、いい質問だね。じゃあお勉強しよう。けじめってのはね、罪をあがなうってことなの。罪は残せない。お社様のお怒りを放置することになるんだからね。だから罪の大きさに比例したけじめで罪を清めなければならないの。わかるよね？
お社様は別に西宮殿を見られても怒らないのですよ。
はあ？あんた何言ってんの？
あの中を見ちゃダメなのはあの中に怖い道具がいっぱいあるからなのです。見るときっと怖がる人もいると思いますのです。だから誰にも見せないようにしてあるのですよ。見た人もきっと怖かったと思います。だから反省してると思いますのです。
反省してるから許されるってあんたが決めることじゃないでしょ。それはお社様が決めること。
僕はお社様の巫女ですよ。
そんなことは知ってるよ。じゃあ何さ、あんたはお社様に怒ってませんよって直接声を聞いて確認したとでも言うわけ。
Rika nodded yes without hesitation. Can't believe the lies she's coming up with. I'm not surprised, I'm shocked.
あんたらフルデ家がそんなざまだからあんたの両親は一昨年のたたりで死んじゃったんだよ。お社様に仕える資格がないとお怒りを受けてね。それであんたの父親をたたり殺したんだよ。
お社様はそんなことしないのです。お父様はお社様のたたりで死んだんじゃないのです。
こんなのが最後のフルデ家の巫女だとはね。お社様が心を安らかにできないのがよくわかるよ。お社様をお祭りするフルデ家の人間でありながら嘆かわしい。
ミーが何を怒っているのか僕にはよくわからないのですよ。
I realized he was in a position to know as much as the other two family heads. As proof, she talked about this year's incident as though it was nothing. Yet she could feign ignorance with a serious face. She sure is something. She's even better than me. I slapped her a few times and pushed her to the floor, and by floor I mean ground because we're outside. Reeking, having tumbled downwards, looked up at me with tears in her eyes.
そもそもあんたが細工殿の鍵が重いから簡単なものに付け替えたいって言い出したのが事の発端なんだよね。
そうですよ。硬くて僕では大変だったので、君吉に相談して簡単な鍵に付け替えてもらったのです。
あんたがその程度の手間を惜しまず頑丈な施錠をそのまま残していたなら細工殿への侵入を許さなかったかもしれない。今回の一件はあんたにも責任の一端があるんだからね。それを忘れない方がいいよ。もちろんあんたと一緒に鍵を付け替えた君吉家当主にも責任があるんだけどね。
That last part was something I added on a whim. I added it to connect Rika's story to the disappearance of Kimiyoshi. I wanted to pressure her psychologically by doing
君吉家
so.
当主はけじめをつけてもらうことになった。だから消えた。古出家当主にもけじめをつけてもらうことになるよ。
Rika was still on the floor, tears pouring down her
あと残って
cheeks.
るのは前原圭一だけ。こいつは古出家の方で頼むことにする。
僕は何もわかんないのですよ。
別にあんたは分かんなくてもいいでしょ。憂慮したり困った顔をするだけでいいんだから。それはうちも同じ。とにかく頼んどくよ。
そんなの。
Rika hung her head. She seemed to want to say something. She was afraid that I might be rough with her again. I doubted Rika Furude was actually at the top of the curse system like the hag was. However, as one of the three family heads, she was a lot closer to the underside of Hinamizawa than I was. By now, that underside was well aware of Keiichi Maibara. I told the elderly leaders of the village yesterday in the meeting that Keiichi Maibara was the last one remaining. I just told the head of the Furude family the same thing, if threateningly. If my threat was effective, the curse of Oyashiro-sama would very soon fall upon Keiichi Maibara. At just the right time, I would grab my enemy right as he took my bait. If the assassin came from the Furude family, this girl would have committed the same sin as the hag. When that time came, I wouldn't hold back. I was going to make sure she suffered, and then kill her. I've heard of a torture technique where you pound dozens of nails into a victim's fingers. I already found a restraining table and the tools for it. When the time comes, I'll pound nails into your fingers. That gruesome anticipation radiated from my eyes and scared Rika even further. But back to class. I wonder how Kimiyoshi is doing. I doubt he died from tiptoeing all night. But sometimes a human can go very easily. He already told me everything I wanted to hear, and he doesn't know anything else anyway. On top of that, he was responsible for spreading the infection that was the curse system of Oyashiro-sama. His sins are very heavy. I really liked Uncle Kimiyoshi. He'd always been kind. The hag was so tough on her relatives, and that's why he was extra nice to me. When we talked yesterday, I was so happy to hear him say he would forgive Shion. He even said he would fight the hag to save her. That made me very happy. Don't worry. If Shion-chan feels bad about what she's done, she won't be demoned away. Leave it to me. I felt such warmth inside of me. I almost shivered. I was so happy, yet so very sad. For he continued to say that Satoshi-kun deserved to die. He said those nice things because he wanted to make Mion happy, since she was worried about Shion. Satoshi-kun deserved to die because he was a member of the cursed Hojo family, but Shion-chan of the Sonozaki family did not. That's what he meant. In other words, to the leaders of the village, including Kimiyoshi, members of the Hojo family, more contemptible than insects. They didn't care if they lived or died. Their sin was not only that they despised the Hojo family so, but also that they let the hatred infect the rest of the village. Therefore, everyone in the village deserves to be a victim of the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Kimiyoshi and the others created an environment that excused murder in that name. If that was so, if Takano-san and Tomitake-san hadn't committed the serious crime of trespassing in the ritual storehouse, then Sadako Hojo, the last survivor of the Hojo family, and Teppei Hojo, who had been hiding in Okonomiya, might have been the victims. Sadako Hojo. He was always around Satoshi-kun. He exposed Satoshi-kun to help her every time she cried. She was one of the people who cornered him. If Sadako wasn't that much of a burden, Satoshi-kun wouldn't have killed his aunt. Somebody told Satoshi-kun to commit that murder, to hide the evidence of his connection to the mastermind. Satoshi-kun was demoned away. That's what Oishi thought. If Satoshi-kun hadn't killed his aunt, maybe he wouldn't have been chosen as last year's victim. Because the commands were vague after all, the curse of Oyashiro-sama fell upon the Hojo family as a whole. It didn't matter which member of the family died. His aunt had a terrible reputation in the neighborhood. She didn't communicate with the neighbors, she was always throwing fits, and there was nothing nice about her in any way. Even if Satoshi-kun didn't kill her, the curse would have fallen upon her sooner or later. Their aunt was the first victim. There needed to be another Hojo to calm the curse. According to a rumor, their uncle was living somewhere in Okonomiya with his lover. However, Okonomiya was a little different from Hinamizawa. The Sonozaki family was powerful there as well, of course. But it would have been more difficult in Okonomiya to demon someone away. So naturally, Satoshi-kun and Sadako, who were still in Hinamizawa, became the targets. Which one should be cursed? That was simple. Sadako, of course. He was snobby and lacking in manners. Everyone in the neighborhood liked Satoshi-kun. Even if he was the son of the Hojo couple who betrayed the village during the dam conflict. Compared to Sadako, he didn't deserve to die. Therefore, the actual victims of the curse should have been his aunt and Sadako. Satoshi-kun was suddenly all alone. His mean aunt and his mean uncle were gone. His sister, who was a burden to him all his life, was gone too. Satoshi-kun was such a nice person. He would be sad, although he'd realized he was finally free. But time would heal him. I'd even help. He didn't have to live in his house in Hinamizawa. There were plenty of empty rooms in the apartment block where I lived. I could find him a part-time job too. He didn't need to go to school in Hinamizawa. He'd go to school with me in Okonomiya instead. He wouldn't know his way around, or really anything about the school there. So I'd be with Satoshi-kun all the time. I'd show him a shortcut to school, we'd go shopping, and I'd teach him many different things. What an unbelievably happy ending. Satoshi-kun had been suffering so much, and I had been pushed away all my life. But we would finally be happy. I enjoyed these sweet delusions, but I didn't have any more time to waste. I was sure there were plenty of old people who had been trying to get hold of Oreo all morning, who were going to try to catch me after I got home from school. Actually, the phone had been ringing constantly while I enjoyed my happy thoughts. When I answered the phone, I casually listened and replied. As I planned, Keiichi Maibara is now known as the next curse victim within the underside of Hinamizawa. I also tried to let them know that the disappearance of the village chief had something to do with the fact that he changed the locks in the ritual storehouse's door. All the authorities in the underside came to realize the seriousness of trespassing the storehouse. After all, one of the heads of the three families got punished. One of the phone calls was from Oishi. He'd also heard about Kimiyoshi's disappearance, and he knew it had something to do with the changing of the lock. I'm impressed. He has some pretty good sources. But all he can do is catch whatever info he can get. There's no way for him to find out where it's coming from. I'd call Keiichi again later tonight. Some of the more aggressive villagers may have already started to take action around him. I'm sure that by now, Keiichi's feeling the danger that's coming toward him. I'd have to be careful that he doesn't get killed easily. If I can catch the enemy before they bit Keiichi, I can use him again as bait. Keiichi, I haven't known him that long. He's funny, if not intelligent. He'll never replace Satoshi-kun. I do think he's fun to be around. There's just one thing I don't like about him. He rubs my head far too often. His hand is as warm as Satoshi-kun's hand, which is why I can't stand it. That's about it. Keiichi isn't Satoshi-kun's enemy. I don't hate him. He's fun to be around. But I wouldn't shed a tear for him if he became a victim of the curse. I won't prevent Keiichi from being killed. But I won't kill him myself either. You're gonna go to bed? You have a good night too, Samuses. I'd made arrangements for the curse to fall upon him, but I never told anyone to kill him. Well, I suppose I did tell Rikafude to take care of Keiichi. Wait a minute. To avenge Satoshi-kun, I'm doing exactly the same thing as the hag did. I'm using the exact same system that killed Satoshi-kun. Keiichi, I'm just using him. I told people to let the curse fall upon Keiichi, but I've been giving him appropriate warnings. I'm going to help him if he tries to live. If I catch all of my enemies, maybe I'll let him loose. He's different from Satoshi-kun. Satoshi-kun was tricked into killing his aunt, and was killed himself afterwards, so there wouldn't be any evidence remaining. I won't kill Keiichi. That's how I'm different from the hag. Evening was turning to night. I had to get dinner ready. I had to eat so I'd have enough strength to take revenge. This place was far from town. It wouldn't even get isolated during winter because of the snow. It would even get isolated. Not unusual for a household like this to have 2 or 3 refrigerators. There were plenty of groceries left in them. I was glad I didn't have to go grocery shopping. I could hear the chorus of the Higurashi. People often say that the sound of the Higurashi brings back memories, but for me it's the exact opposite. I've only ever heard the sound of the Higurashi in Hinamizawa. Therefore, the sound of the Higurashi to me is Hinamizawa. The sound reminded me that I wasn't supposed to be here, that I couldn't be here. That was when I heard the doorbell. Because there was a good distance between the house and the gate, there was both a doorbell and an intercom by the latter. It had a security camera, too. Something as modern as a security camera monitor in this old-fashioned kitchen looked rather strange. I turned the switch, but nothing appeared on the monitor. I tried to check the cord, but there were a bunch of I tried to check the plug, but there were a bunch of cords going behind the refrigerator, so I couldn't even do that. The doorbell continued to ring while I tried to figure out if the monitor was broken, or if I just didn't know how to turn it on. I only felt like answering the door depending on who it was. It'd normally be easier to pretend to be out, but that wouldn't help me. I was waiting for my enemies to show up. I couldn't just hide myself in that case. The hag was supposed to be sick and in an extremely bad mood. I'd already sent word out that she didn't want to see anyone, so who could it be? I made up my mind and turned the intercom on. If it was someone unwanted, I could just turn whoever it was away. I had to act normally, so I wouldn't arouse suspicion. I had to act normally.
はい。どちら様でしょう。
こんにちはなのです。
She didn't tell me her name, but I recognized her voice.
リカちゃんか。どうしたの？こんな時間に。
実はお醤油を分けてもらいに来たのですよ。
Soy sauce? I almost screamed, but I controlled myself. I took a moment to think about the situation. Hinamizawa was far from most stores, so sometimes neighbors would share seasoning and stuff with each other. The village sometimes got snowed in during winter. But the Furude shrine was quite far from this house. It was rather odd for her to come all the way out here on her bicycle just to get some soy sauce. Maybe she was using it as an excuse. Maybe there was something she wanted to talk to me about. That was when I noticed a piece of paper that was on the refrigerator door next to the intercom. We still have plenty of homemade soy sauce in stock. Please feel free to come to the Sonozaki house if you want some. The hag must have given that flyer to everyone. One of our relatives sent her a barrel of soy sauce. If you want some, bring a container. That's what the flyer said. I see. This would explain it. There was a handwritten note on the bottom of the flyer. Soy sauce is in the storage area under the floor. Give them as much as they want. There was a storage area beneath the floor. When I opened it, I saw a barrel of soy sauce, along with a funnel and a ladle. I didn't want Rika to notice anything suspicious at this point. I decided to share the soy sauce with her.
いいよ。入れるものは持ってきてるの？
お醤油の瓶を持ってきましたのです。
オッケー。勝手に入ってきていいよ。玄関で待ってる。
As I headed there, I heard the doorbell ring again.
内側から閉まってて、門が入れないのですよ。
ああ、そうだった。ごめんごめん。今開けに行くよ。待ってて。
People didn't pay much attention to safety around here in Hinamizawa. People didn't think too much about locking the doors. As someone who's lived in the town, I always locked everything. To let Rika Frude in, I'd have to go outside.
こんばんはなのですよ。
こんばんは。
Rika smiled at me. She was holding a huge soy sauce bottle. She acted like I never yelled at her, got violent with her, or made her cry at all today. Or perhaps she came to curry favor, thinking that she angered me. I invited Rika to the front door. I told her to wait for a moment and tried to take the bottle. But Rika took her shoes off and walked into the house with the bottle in her
いいよいいよ。
hands.
私が入れてくるから待ってなよ。
僕も上後でお醤油入れるのは上手になったのですよ。
She looked at me as if begging. I guess she wanted to pour the soy sauce into the bottle herself. I didn't want her to come in the house. I suppose I didn't want her to wait there alone either. If she came to the kitchen with me, I could keep my eyes on her. And so I brought Rika to the kitchen. We walked down the hallway. I only heard my footsteps. I stopped suddenly and turned around to make sure Rika was following me. Rika bumped into me.
ああ、ごめんごめん。
I made sure she was right behind me and started to walk again. Tap, tap, tap. Tip, tip, tip. Tap, tap. Tip, tip. Rika must have been having fun matching her footsteps to mine. Even when I quickly sped up, our footsteps matched perfectly. Tap, tap. Tap, tap. Tip, tip. Tip, tip. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped suddenly. Tip, tip, tip. Tip. Rika stopped suddenly too after taking an extra step. When I turned around, Rika smiled at me. Our footsteps matched perfectly, and when I stopped suddenly, I heard her extra step. I've experienced such footsteps before. It was making me feel uncomfortable. But now, although her footsteps sounded the same as the other ones I'd experienced, I saw her when I turned around. That was the difference between them. I left the storage door open so we could see the soy sauce barrel. The memo said she can take as much as she wants, but I wasn't sure there was enough left. I crouched down and tried to open the lid of the soy sauce barrel. Even when I crouched down, I could hear Rika's extra step.
まだまだいっぱいあるよ。ほら、好きなだけ持ってくといい。
When I turned around, Rika was very close to me. But, hey? Who is this? I saw Rika, but it wasn't Rika at all. It was like when I switched with my sister. The outside was the same, but the inside was different. Did Rika have a twin sister? I was confused for a moment. That's when Rika sprayed something from a small bottle into my eyes. Felt a terrible pain in my eyes, and suddenly tears poured out and my nose started to run. I couldn't stop sneezing either. I stumbled around covering my face. I then realized I was attacked. I shut my eyes tightly for a moment, then opened them again. Rika was about to grab my hair and drag me down onto the floor. When Rika saw me open my eyes, she sprayed at me again. I shut my eyes to avoid the spray, but my nose still breathed in the substance. I avoided the pain in my eyes, but the tears, the runny nose, and the sneezing continued. Shit, ah! My brain isn't working quickly enough. However, when I finally understood that I had been attacked by Rika Furude, my brain started to grind into motion. Rika Furude knocked me on my back and got on top of me. I tried to escape from her by rolling onto the kitchen floor. As I rolled, I hit an oven, a huge jar, and destroyed a pile of something on the floor as I fought back. But Rika didn't let go of me. She stayed on top and restrained me. She was sitting on my stomach, and I felt intense pain and pressure. She sure could fight well. I still couldn't see anything. Rika had the upper hand. My eyes were shut, and I was in real danger. I tried to blink. I saw Rika's expression. I didn't know Rika Furude all that well. I only knew her from the few times we met. I went to school as Mion, from the things I'd heard from other people. As far as I knew, there's no way Rika Furude would ever do something like this. This is just impossible. 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 No, I can't fill my head with that word. I have to calm down and figure out what to do next. Shit, I'm too much of a mess to even think. I tried to peek at her face again. She still had the spray bottle in one hand. What I didn't expect was the thing in her other hand. How could I mistake it for anything else? It was definitely a syringe. When Rika realized I'd regained my eyesight, she pointed the spray bottle right at me and let loose with it. I shut my eyes tightly and tried to ignore the pain. That was when, even though I was blinded, Rika made a miscalculation. She had sprayed at me from such a close distance that she inhaled the substance as well. I heard Rika sneeze and realized that it was my chance. Even if I couldn't see, I knew she was right there. I hit Rika's face a few times. When I felt Rika's weight shift, I escaped. I then got my stun gun ready. Rika must have inhaled just a little of the spray. She wasn't sneezing anymore. It was glaring at me instead. Rika's expression didn't change. I was sure she was disappointed that her surprise attack was a failure. Rika flinched just a little. She was still holding the spray bottle and aiming it at my eyes. She was trying to use the spray first, and then give me the shot. I didn't know what was in that syringe, but it was a clear liquid. It had to be something bad. She wanted to take my eyesight, get on top of me, and then give me the shot. Whatever was in that syringe took a while to take effect. I might have the chance to fight back, and seriously injure Rika. But Rika's surprise attack told me that just being injected was more than enough. In other words, whatever the effect, would start to work immediately. Therefore, I wouldn't be able to fight back against her. It'd probably either knock me out or kill me. In any case, what I had was equally deadly. My stun gun was very powerful. Just one shot would be all it took. What happened before was proof of its power. Rika knew my stun gun was a lot more powerful than her spray. She was being extremely cautious. I threw a pile of newspapers at her. The pile wasn't tied together. The newspapers flew all over Rika. I jumped at her immediately after. I shoved my stun gun into her and pulled the trigger. Rika spasmed and fell to the floor. You fool! Hesitating in a fight where a single blow wins. Only amateurs just glare at each other. Don't have a single clue about how advantageous the first strike is, and a single blow can decide everything. The spray bottle rolled onto the ground, but she still had the syringe. Rika was down, but I couldn't let my guard down either. I kicked her in the side and clambered on top of her. I took the syringe. I held Rika's arm down and gave her the shot. My actions could hardly be called gentle. I injected her violently. I injected everything that was in the syringe. Rika began to convulse. I stood back and watched for what would happen to her body. Of course, I still had my guard up. While I assumed that the drug would incapacitate her immediately, I didn't know exactly what kind of reaction she would have.
Ha! ざまあないね。私に勝てるとか夢にでも思った？なめんじゃねえや!
After a few more convulsions, Rika unsteadily got to her feet. That's ridiculous. How can she even stand? I looked at my stun gun. Damn it, the power is on the lowest setting. Maybe it had been readjusted when we were rolling on the floor. I changed the setting to maximum. Rika turned pale and started sweating all over. I didn't know its exact effects, but if Rika had given me the shot, I'd be the one experiencing her symptoms. She looked really sick, so obviously she must have been feeling awful too. She couldn't even focus. She was very wobbly, had her hand on the wall. She'd lost her balance, and it must have been hard for her to stand. She didn't look so brave anymore. Rika wobbled some more and moaned as if she was about to throw up. Rika looked scary as she moaned and wobbled, but at the same time she looked kind of funny too. Certainly, she hadn't even dreamed that she'd be getting the shot herself. As the man sows, so shall he reap. That's what you get.
実に滑稽だね。笑えるよ。目が回ってるのかな。それとも息ができないのかな。あんたがあとどのくらいでくたばるのか見物するのも楽しいよ。ああ、でもそれじゃ拷問する楽しみがなくなるね。私さ、あんたにはあの組台を使ってやろうとずっと心に決めてたんだよね。あんたが自分の薬で死ぬのが早いか、両手樹脂に釘をたらふく食らって痛みで行くのが早いか。よし決めた。そうしんじゃ会場を移そうか。楽しい場所を移すためにちょいと眠っててもらうよ。
I walked up to Rika, my stun gun making popping sounds. When Rika saw the sparks from the stun gun, he moved to grab a huge kitchen knife.
おや、まだその程度の元気はあるわけだ。そうでなくちゃ面白くないよ。あんたにはいろいろ聞きたいことがあるしね。無駄に抵抗しない方がいろいろと辛くないよ。もっとも抵抗しなくても辛い目に遭うだろうけど。
残念だけど、あんたの誘いは断るわ。この冷血女が。
What she said wasn't anything I'd expect to hear from the Rika I knew. But I didn't hesitate. I had the advantage, so I didn't need to worry. Besides, this was coming from the last survivor of the Furude family, one of the 3 families. That sudden change somehow felt natural.
あんたらの御三家の血塗られた歴史に比べたら、私なんてとてもとても。それを古出家当主様に褒めてもらえるなんてね、ちょっと光栄だね。んで、そのフラフラな体で包丁一本で抵抗してみせる。立っているだけでも限界なくせに。
そうね、あんたの言う通り、これがどうも私の限界。お前なんかに召し取られて殺されるくらいなら悪いけど、お先に退場させてもらうわ。
退場？できるならしてごらんよ。
It was clear who held the advantage here. But despite that, an odd thrill filled both of us. We lost our minds wasn't a fitting phrase for the people of Hinamizawa. It was a feeling of release when modern demons could stop pretending to be human. Yes, this was a mad banquet of demons, with the savoring of blood and devouring of flesh. Attended by the head of the Furude family and the head of the Sonozaki family, the old families whose blood is closest to the madness of the demons. I stood in front of the hallway so as to block her escape route. The windows had grates and the door had a safety chain on it. If she turned around, I'd hit her with my stun gun. In this situation, what did Rika Furude mean by taking her leave? Rika got her knife ready. I expected her to aim at my stomach when she attacked, so I took a stance with my stun gun ready in my hand. Rika, however, suddenly turned around. I carefully watched to see what her next move would be. Rika put the handle of the knife to the wall and held it in place. What was she doing?
じゃあね。さよなら、冷血女。お前なんかに殺されてたまるか。
I love the little static you can hear of the stun gun. Rika reared her head back and slammed her throat against the knife on the wall. Her blood splattered all over. Rika bent backwards repeatedly and let the knife slash at her throat, again and again. Her neck and chest were dyed red. I'd always thought blood was darker, but her blood wasn't dark. It was so bright. Must have been confused, but it looked pretty. After doing this several times, Rika turned around. Her eyes were wide open. She didn't look like she was from this world. Her face looked like something both living and dead, both real and artificial. It was very scary, eerie, and above all else, pale. Although her face looked unearthly, it was a very appropriate face for a demon. I didn't have a mirror, so I couldn't tell. I was sure I looked exactly like her. Rika continued to violently slash her throat. It reminded me of someone trying to break a huge piece of ice with an ice pick. That's exactly what Rika looked like. The white chips of ice coolly flying through the air. What I saw before me was a beautiful sight. Every time Rika struck her throat, tiny drops of red blood splattered the boring white world around her. It was like a dance. A dedication dance by the final head of the Furude family. The demon's last dance of dedication to Oyashiro-sama. Upon seeing that literally blood-curdling dance, I let out a fierce roar. I had no reason to do so. I was howling like an animal. We were like animals, trying to kill each other, both getting covered in blood. And inevitably, as one convulses in a pool of that blood, the other threw its head back and howled. My body shivered with the joy I felt inside of me. This was death, the most final of judgments, and it was right before me. The demons howled, screamed, and roared. The roars faded, and my voice started to change from the voice of a demon back to that of a human. As a demon, I roared, but as a human, I sneered. Rika was covered in blood from her neck down. Her blood was pouring out, making a little noise. Rika was still staring into my eyes. I stared back at her. I wasn't sure they were still eyes, though. They were no longer human eyes, but the eyes of the dead. Rika's corpse vomited blood from her mouth and nose, and smiled. Then she dropped the knife. She stuck her hands out and turned her palms upwards. Her wiggling fingers reminded me of an insect's legs. Those fingers reached for her own throat. I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never seen anybody do this before. Yes, Rika was scratching her own throat, was ripping her own throat apart. Maybe that wasn't a good description. She was trying to rip out the inside of her throat through the opening she'd made with the knife. Her fingers found the biggest tear. Rika smiled. At least, that's what I would have called it if she were alive. She ripped open the tear in one tug. On hearing my scream, Rika died and fell on her face, into the pool of blood. That was it. She didn't get up again to show me her throat. I stepped back from Rika Furude's body and bumped into the wall in the hallway. Rah! I roared again in admiration of the ritual dance of dedication of the head of the Furude family. Joy ran through my body and blood rushed through my veins.
私わかった。打ち勝った。
Then I realized I disposed of the heads of the 3 families, the core of the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Everything was finally exposed. The curse of Oyashiro-sama and its masterminds were all exposed. I disposed of the leaders of the 3 families, who all killed Satoshi-kun. The head of the Sonozaki family died of a heart attack. She was at the bottom of the well, along with a wheelchair. I apprehended the head of the Kimiyoshi family. He'd continue to tiptoe until he died. The head of the Furude family died, a way that was perfect for the final head of the 3 families of Onigafuchi. I did it. I accomplished my mission. I defeated all the masterminds who killed Satoshi-kun with the curse. Every one. Satoshi-kun, you were powerless. You didn't have the means to fight back. Those evil people simply sneered while they let you die. After marking you as a member of the cursed Hojo family, I will never, ever forgive them. They believed you deserved to die because you were one of the Hojos. As long as it was done by the curse of Oyashiro-sama, they didn't care how you were killed. I will never forgive those people for creating this world. What could I have done to save you, Satoshi-kun? I couldn't save you. Shion Sonozaki couldn't do anything else at the time. If I was Mion, not Shion. If I was Mion that day, I could have saved you. Mion could have saved you. That's right, I remember now. Shion. She said she wanted to eat red snapper sashimi that day. I was supposed to eat that, but Shion pouted and cried. That was why I let her switch, just for that night. I did it to make her happy, like a big sister would. Shion was never treated well, so I felt bad. That was it. I was being a good sister. That was it. When morning came, the world had been turned upside down, and it remained so until today. We weren't twins anymore. The one with the demon was Mion, and the one without the demon was Shion. What was that supposed to mean? Wait, Mom, listen. I'm Mion, not her. You can tell us apart, right, Mom? Look, can't you tell I'm Mion? Come on, everyone. Tell me I'm Mion. I'm Mion. Don't call me Shion. I'm Mion, I am.
その時、私ははっきり悟ったよ。あんたは知っていたんだ。あの夜、親類たちが集まって何をするのか、ただの宴会じゃないって知っていたんだ。知らない。本当に知らなかったの。はあ？なわけないでしょ。あんた、あの日だけ嫌にしつこく絡んできたじゃない。タイの刺身なんて食べたことない。食べてみたい。いつもミオンばかりずるい。私にもって。普段ならおとなしく納得するくせに、あの日だけ必要に。知らないの。本当に知らなかったの。あんな恐ろしいことになるなんて思ってたら絶対に言わなかった。はっ、どうだか。あんたはいつも妬んでたじゃない。ミオンばかりいい目にあってずるいって。だから私が気を利かせてたまに入れ替わってあげてたんじゃない。あんたはそれに満足していなかった。より一層妬んでいったんだ。そしてあの夜の意味を自分だけ知り、私から奪ったんだ。ミオンを奪ったんだ。ミオンを返せ。私がミオンなんだ。私が園崎ミオン。お前はシオンなんだよ、シオン。ミオンを語るな、偽物が。
I hit the bars of the cell repeatedly while I roared. Compared to my roar, the metallic noise of the bars sounded like the cry of a little puppy. I had been convinced by something so stupid. The tattoo of the demon was just a way of telling us apart. Even without that tattoo, I am Mion. That's right, I am Mion Sonozaki. I gathered my hair and put it in a ponytail with the yellow band that Mion used all the time. Since I didn't feel the hair on the back of my neck, I felt like I could think more clearly now. Two Mions looked at each other through the iron bars. According to our sibling rules, that was never to happen. Yes, there was only one Mion and one Shion. There could never be two of either at the same time.
ミオンは私だ。ミオンはここにいる。お前がミオンじゃない。 だから語るな、二度と私を語るな。聞いているのか、シオン。聞こえているのか。聞こえているなら返事をしろ。私に返事を届かせろ、シオン。
I took myself back on this day. Shion admitted she was Shion.
ミオンであることがこんなにも素晴らしいなんて。すごいよ。体全体が言うことを聞く。頭の回転が優れた気がする。そうだよ、ミオンは万能なんだ。ミソカスのシオンとは違う。落ちこぼれのくせに下手なミオンのふりなんかしやがって。それが私にとってどれだけむずがゆかったことかわかるでしょ、あんたになら。シオン。はい、おね。
Shion called me sis. Older sister. That's lost in translation. And so I was Mion. The demon who had been asleep deep inside of me was finally allowed to wake up. The demon roared, and my whole body shivered to express its
シオ
joy.
ン、あんたには罪がある。あんたは今までミオンだった。園崎家の鬼を継ぐミオンという強い立場がありながら、サトシ君を救わなかった、救おうとしなかった。サトシ君を救うための100億の瞬間があったはずなのに、あんたはその全てを見殺しにすることを選んだんだ。私は許さない、お前を許さない。お前が私だったらサトシ君を救えていたのに、お前が私を奪いサトシ君を殺したことを私は絶対に許さない。
Shion was shaking on the other side of the
私は
bars.
お前を殺すだろう。絶対に殺す。サトシ君の胸に見合う殺し方をしてやる。お前を一番残酷に殺す方法が何なのか、今日から毎日考えて過ごしてやる。シオンは私がそれを思いつくまでのわずかな日々を、いつ殺されるのかどう殺されるのかに怯えながら過ごすがいい。簡単には殺さない。むごたらしく殺す。殺した後はサトシ君と同じ井戸に放り投げてやる。そしてサトシ君にあの世で謝ってこい。それが私を語り続けてきたことへの報いだ。報い報い、お前の罪。うわ
Okay, I think with that, we are going to stop for today.